Every morning, millions of people break bread without realizing something essential was left out. Not by the baker, not by the recipe. Time was. The bread on your table this morning took 45 minutes to rise. The bread that built Chinese civilization took 24 hours. In that missing time lives a story of invisible allies, ancient wisdom, and a betrayal so complete we forgot it ever happened. This is the story of laomian, old dough, living dough, the beating heart of Chinese kitchens for 2,000 years, and why we threw it all away. Picture northern China in winter. The year is 180 AD during the Han Dynasty. Snow covers the wheat fields that stretch beyond the horizon. In a small village, smoke rises from a bakery where the day begins before dawn. The baker's hands are already warm from kneading. His fingers work through dough in a wooden trough so old it remembers his grandfather's touch. The wood is dark, scarred by decades of use. Health inspectors today would condemn it as unsanitary. They would miss what mattered. Those scars hold life. Billions of microscopic workers that have been waiting all night to begin their labour. The baker doesn't know their names, or that they even have names. He simply calls them laomian, old dough. He takes a piece of yesterday's dough, still alive with fermentation, and folds it into today's flour. The cycle continues as it has for generations, father to son, master to apprentice, village to village. Steam rises from bamboo baskets arranged like small cities across wooden tables. Inside, white pillows of mantou rest in the gentle heat, not baked, steamed. The ancient Chinese worked with gentler heat. Steam cooked the bread without drying it out, preserving what slow fermentation had already created. The baker lifts a basket. The mantou inside are perfect, soft, white, slightly sweet from the slow work of fermentation. They will feed families today. They keep well for days in a cool kitchen, with their natural acidity helping them resist mold without added preservatives. It was knowledge shaped slowly through repetition and time, but the engineer doesn't know he's engineering. He simply knows what works, what his father taught him, what his father's father discovered through trial and error across centuries of hunger and survival. Inside each grain of wheat lives a guardian. Today, we call it phytic acid. The ancient Chinese had no name for it. They only knew that wheat, left alone, fought back against digestion. It hoarded minerals, iron, zinc, magnesium. Essential nutrients locked away like treasure in a vault. The human stomach alone struggles to unlock it. We can chew wheat. We can swallow it. But we cannot easily claim all its gifts. The bacteria can. During those long hours of fermentation, while the dough rests and bubbles and slowly transforms, the microbes in the starter work like tiny locksmiths. They produce acids that help break down the molecular chains holding nutrients prisoner. By morning, what was once defended wheat has become more willing nourishment. Modern science later confirmed what ancient bakers learned by instinct. Long fermentation breaks down much of what makes wheat harder to digest, including a significant portion of its phytic acid. The longer and more active the fermentation, the more complete the transformation. Ancient Chinese peasants often ate bread that was partially pre-digested by microbes. Much of today's industrial bread skips that step. But phytic acid was only one battle in a larger story. The tension between speed and nourishment, between efficiency and wisdom. Walk through that ancient bakery again. Notice what you don't see. No stainless steel, no sanitizer, no industrial mixers. The tools are simple: wood, bamboo, clay. Materials that breathe, that harbour life, that become partners in the process rather than mere instruments. The wooden trough is not just scarred, it's alive. Its cracks hold living communities of helpful microbes that have made this wood their home. Every time dough touches this surface, it receives an inoculation of helpful bacteria and yeasts. The trough became part of the food itself. Modern bakeries are controlled and scrubbed. We've pushed microbes out of our equipment so effectively that we also pushed away many of our microscopic allies. The bacteria that once helped us transform and digest our food no longer live in our tools by default. We made our kitchens safer on paper. We made our food easier to ship. And often, we made it harder to digest. The ancient Chinese understood something we've forgotten. Not all bacteria are enemies. Some have been working alongside humans for millennia. Some are friends we've known so long we forgot their names. But even friendly bacteria need the right environment, the right food, the right time. Ancient Chinese farmers didn't operate with pure single-crop wheat systems the way many modern fields do. They grew different grains in different regions, and often in rotation: millet, wheat, barley, and others, chosen to survive uncertainty. Not from laziness, but from wisdom earned through famine. When weather turned against one crop, another might endure. Farmers who planted diversity lost part of their harvest, but saved the rest. Farmers who trusted a single crop took a bigger risk. The survivors were those who hedged their bets with nature's variety. The same principle appeared again in how grain was handled. Different grains and flours brought different enzymes and microbial partners into dough. A blend could ferment differently from a single, purified flour, changing how fast acids formed and proteins changed. Even when bakers couldn't see the chemistry, they could taste the results. In the 20th century, the grain itself began to change. Scientists created short, high-yield wheat, uniform, efficient, perfectly suited for machines and industrial milling. Fields became more standardized. Flour became more consistent. On its own, that wasn't evil. But when you combine standardized grain with rapid fermentation, the process shifts dramatically. We didn't just change the plant. We redesigned the whole system it moved through. Still, the ancient Chinese had one more advantage. They didn't bake all their bread. They steamed it. Elsewhere, bread was hardened by ovens. Here, bakers refined the use of gentle heat. Steam kept temperature around the boiling point of water. No thick, hard crust. Less moisture loss. A soft interior that many people find easier to chew and swallow. The result was mahantou, soft, white, pillowy bread that stayed pleasant for days in a cool, dry house. And many of the benefits created during long fermentation, acids, flavor compounds, structural changes to the dough, came through the steamer intact. Over time, ancient Chinese bakers learned how several choices worked together. Living starter cultures for active microbial work, time for deeper transformation, steaming for gentle cooking, and a soft, moist crumb. It wasn't perfect. Some days failed. Some loaves collapsed. But over time, the system endured. Not through microscopes and lab reports, but through generations of careful observation, through respect for time, through trust in processes they couldn't see but could taste. This system helped feed dynasties. It sustained the populations who worked the fields and built walls and roads. It nourished the minds that invented paper, gunpowder, and the compass. For centuries, it worked well enough to become tradition. Then, in another part of the world, the equation changed. The shift came quietly, in laboratories where speed mattered more than patience. Scientists gathered with a problem. Bread took too long to make. Overnight doughs and long rises were inefficient, unprofitable, unacceptable in a world that had learned to value speed above almost everything else. They invented a solution. Industrial mixers so violent they didn't need dough, they beat it into submission. Under intense pressure and high-speed mixing, these machines forced gas into dough in minutes instead of hours. Add more yeast. Add oxidizing agents, dough conditioners, and fats. Fermentation time could be slashed. From raw flour to sliced, bagged loaf in roughly 3.5 hours. Not 24, not 12, just a few. When this process reached factories, profits soared. Bakeries could use lower protein wheat. produce thousands of loaves per hour. In Britain, this new bread method captured the vast majority of the market within a few decades. But speed came with a price. Ancient breads and long-fermented loaves were naturally more acidic. Bacteria produced acids that helped slow down spoilage and mold growth. Traditional loaves often kept noticeably longer than quickly made bread, especially in cooler climates. Industrial bread, made with minimal fermentation, had much less natural acidity. It staled differently. Mold found an easier home. So the industry added chemicals. Preservatives replaced fermentation. Additives replaced time. Similar pressures spread across the globe, including China. From the 1970s onward, industrial yeast and factory methods increasingly replaced laomian in Chinese steamed bread production. The old ways began to look slow and imprecise next to modern efficiency. Local yeast factories were built. Ancient practices were sidelined in favour of standardised processes. Within a generation, the living bread that had anchored many northern Chinese kitchens became rarer. First it was what grandparents did. Then it became a curiosity. Then, in many places, it was forgotten. We saved time and quietly lost part of the system. Today, the same industry that helped sideline traditional bread sells a sourdough for $7 a loaf. They understand our hunger for something real. They see us searching for gut-friendly alternatives. So they print sourdough on labels and charge premium prices. But read the ingredients. At its core, real sourdough can be made from just flour, water, salt, and a living starter. Nothing else is required. If you see commercial yeast listed, it's usually industrial bread with branding. If you see vinegar or acetic acid, it's often flavoured to taste sour without relying on long fermentation. If you see a list of conditioners and improvers, you're paying premium prices for the same industrial logic, dressed up in rustic language. In those loaves, much of the phytic acid remains largely locked. The gluten is less transformed by time. The full community of fermentation bacteria never had a chance to do their work. We're buying the illusion of tradition while consuming the reality of industrial efficiency. But the real tradition survives, not in supermarket aisles and not only in expensive artisan bakeries. It survives in knowledge, in understanding, in the simple recognition that what worked for centuries might still work today. The method ancient Chinese bakers relied on was simple. Mix flour and water into a firm ball about the size of your fist. Bury it in flour or keep it well covered to protect it and slow it down. Wait, often 12 to 24 hours, sometimes longer, depending on your kitchen. When you uncover it, it should smell like overripe fruit. Sweet, slightly alcoholic. That's the scent of microbes working, the aroma of fermentation that actually transforms wheat. Dissolve this fermented ball in warm water. Use the milky liquid to start your bread dough. Before cooking, save a small piece for next time. Roll it into a ball. Protect it again. The cycle continues, as it has in different forms for generations, as it can again. This is about remembering that time can be an ingredient, that bacteria can be allies. That wisdom earned through centuries of careful observation might be worth more than efficiency gained through a few decades of industrial optimization. The ancient Chinese bakers trusted processes they couldn't see. They respected time they couldn't really spare. They worked with forces they couldn't name. They understood that some things cannot be rushed, that some transformations require patience, that some gifts only come to those willing to wait. We traded that understanding for speed. We chose convenience over depth. We forgot that the best things in life often take time. But forgetting is not permanent. Memory can be recovered. Wisdom can be reclaimed. The microbes that helped our ancestors are still here, floating in the air and clinging to grain, ready to resume their old partnership with human hands. All we need to do is slow down, give them time, trust the process. The solution to our modern bread problem isn't only in laboratories or factories. It's not just in supplements or medications. It's in remembering what we once knew, in honouring what once worked. It's in understanding that bread isn't the enemy. Rushed bread is. The knowledge lives on, in every grain of flour, in every drop of water. In every moment, we choose patience over speed, wisdom over pure efficiency, tradition over convenience. Click subscribe to learn more about ancient times. They have many secrets and wonders we just forgot. The ancient bakers are gone, but what they understood still works. It waits quietly whenever we are ready to slow down.